This video is brought to you by Midway USA. Support the channel by choosing Midway for your shooting and outdoor supplies.
The G3, or HK91, a legend in the world of Cold War battle rifles. With its strong emphasis towards rugged reliability, simplicity, good accuracy, and high modularity, the G3 would pave way to decades of successful products under Heckler Koch. So today we'll delve into the post-war West German classic, the G3 family of rifles. We'll talk about the history behind the adaptation of the G3, one of the most ideal military battle rifles of its era, and the countries who adopted it. And along the way, we'll witness how FN FAL, the Belgians, accidentally set the stage that propelled H&K into being one of the world's most successful small arms manufacturers in modern day. Now, the heart of the G3 traces roots back to the German MG42's roller-locked system. When the German engineers were observing the machine gun's roller-locked system under high-speed footage, they accidentally discovered that the firearm could operate even when the roller-locking heads were not fully locked. Now, this birthed the roller-delayed system with a fluted chamber that was used in the SGG-45M. And again, the G3 uses a roller-delayed system, and not a roller-locked system like the MG42. Years later, during the post-war timeframe, the West Germans were reconstituting their military as the Bundeswehr, and a main weapon under NATO was required to fire the 7.62 NATO cartridge. Initially, the West Germans had put in plans to order the FN FAL as their primary weapon, designated as the Gewehr I, or the G1. Now, they were initially satisfied with its performance under service with the Bundesgrenzschutz, or the German border guards. By the late 50s, there would be north of 100,000 G1s delivered to the Bundeswehr by FN FAL. But when West Germany wanted a license for local production, they were flat out refused by the Belgians, understandably from a troubled past. One may even say two very troubled times between Germany and Belgium. It wasn't until the rise of the communist threat that the German military was allowed to be reconstituted as the Bundeswehr. So the G1 or the FN FAL was simply not an option, and the Germans gathered three other examples of battle rifles to look at. The Swiss SG510 or PE57 as the G2, the Spanish SETMI as a G3, and the American AR-10 as a G4. And the SETMI, designed by Dr. Ludwig Vogrimler, the same man who designed the STG-45M, indeed was a predecessor to the G3. the Setme was licensed and chosen as a base model to modify into the first models of the G3 as we know it. The G3 is actually much easier to manufacture than you'd think. While the tooling and design engineering took some time to perfect, the stamped sheet metal receivers were quick to stamp out, as opposed to the FN FAL's milled receivers, allowing more of the unit cost to be focused on vital components like the barrel and the bolt. So the machines churned and thousands upon thousands of G3s were made at the H&K facility in Oberndorf am Neckar in Germany. It was apparent that by the 60s, the G3 was here to stay, but the 70s showed that the G3 would rival Belgium's FN FAL as one of the most dependable battle rifles in the world. Other facilities in foreign countries were licensed for mass production, like FNP in Portugal, POF in Pakistan, EBO in Greece, and MKE in Turkey. Very soon, the G3 showed up as a rival to the FN FAL in more and more places around the world. Remember, the Rhodesians used the FMP Portuguese G3s side by side with the FN FAL. Salvadorian guerrillas, who used to hide their G3s in running streams when the army came to search their villages. And yes, the G3s always worked when they went back to retrieve them weeks later covered in river muck. The Norwegians, the Swedes, the Brits, the Latvians, the Lithuanians, the Greeks, the Turks, the Portuguese, and the Germans would all carry G3 variants onto peacekeeping and NATO military operations. In short, the G3 is incredibly reliable, simple to maintain, and highly modular. Its dead-on reliability carries the rifle through most adverse environments that a soldier would face in the field, which in a military environment, reliability trumps all other features. So, the roller-delayed blowback system in the MP5 and the G3 is often misunderstood by many. So today I thought I'd enlist the help of my wife and use some household items to explain some core principles on how this operating system works. Oh, okay, you're pretty strong, okay. And we're going to demonstrate with an MP5 because it is in fact smaller and easier to manipulate the internals than the G3 with much greater internal pressures. Now, a lot of times, the roller-delayed blowback system is the reason why the MP5 and the G3 are so dang reliable. And all of that comes down to this. You see these rollers that pop out. That, on the bolt head, is what locks into the trunnion, or barrel extension. Now, if you think of this, this is kind of like if you went to a doorway, and you took your hands and wedged it into it, right? Wedge it in. And if momentum came from the front, as demonstrated right here as my wife runs and pushes me.
Okay, go ahead.
These rollers on the side will dig in and prevent it from going backwards. Now, when the rollers start to retract,
and then I'm going to loosen my fingers a little bit like this. Go ahead.
Of course, the bolt can go backwards. Once again, as demonstrated here.
Okay.
Now, the second concept I want to talk about is a transfer of momentum. This is best illustrated with pool balls. Like, let's say if you're going to play pool and you take the cue ball and you break the rack, you see massive transfer of momentum into all of those balls. If we isolate that with just 3 balls, the cue ball hitting the original target ball and transferring momentum to the pool ball behind it. You see, that is a linear path that the momentum is transferred. However, if you put 2 balls behind it, you see the balls actually get knocked out at an angle. Now, follow me here. If we go one step farther and you hold down one of the balls and you shoot the cue ball, you'll see that the momentum is then transferred to 1 ball at an angle. Okay, you grasp that. Let's talk about how this thing works. When you load a cartridge and this thing is chambered, again, the locking piece inside interacts on the rollers and pushes them out. Now, that works because the locking piece right here, you can see has these two pockets. Now, that's the locking shoulder. And that locking shoulder wedges against those two rollers and pushes them out. And the locking shoulder is what primarily holds the rollers out. Now, once you fire the cartridge, right, that momentum comes backwards and is enacted on the bolt head. But of course, the bolt head, you have the rollers held into the trunnion.
Okay.
And so if you imagine our pool ball situation to where one side is held down and then all of your momentum is transferred inwards towards the locking piece. And when the locking piece starts to go backwards, your rollers retract. And once that retracts, the entire system extracts the cartridge, and it works like that. Now, the angle of this locking shoulder determines how quickly or how much of a delay this roller has to retract. That itself determines how long, in my situation, my arms are held into the side of the door frame to delay that recoil, delay the bolt retracting, and giving it a different bolt carrier speed going backwards, and therefore interacting with a different amount of resistance to a different cartridge velocity and mass that it is firing out. So in a nutshell, that is how it works. Now, if it weren't like this system, if it were just a bolt that would just fire and then there is nothing locking it, the G3 would actually have to use a 23-pound bolt. That kind of a mass just to counteract the momentum that's pushed backwards with a 308 cartridge. And that's why you don't see direct blowback 308s. But you do see direct blowback 9mm because, of course, you're firing a projectile at much lower speed and much lower pressure pushing outwards. And so there's a lot less momentum transferred backwards. But when you use a similar G3 system, it gives you that mechanical advantage in the MP5 that it decreases a significant amount of the recoil because, again, you're using the system to delay the speed of the bolt carrier group going backwards. That's also why the recoil of this system feels so distinctly different from a gas-operated system. But anyways, back to the show. The Rock and Lock magazines are able to work in dusty, muddy, and icy situations, while the cammed charging handle helps assist the bolt carrier group to unlock during reloads. The receiver is actually stamped from a softer steel. Now, Kalashnikov enthusiasts are quick to criticize that it is not hardened through heat treating like the AKM, but the truth is, it was actually designed that way. No, you can't bend it with your fingernails, but in the instance if the receiver is dented, the G3 was designed to be sent back to the factory and have a shaping mandrel inserted into it and hammered back to the correct specs to fully repair it for duty. The cold hammer forged barrel is also free-floated, with an increased amount of accuracy afforded with a high degree of reliability from its fluted chamber. The H&K design is also highly modular. By using push pins, the G3 can swap stocks, handguards, pistol grips, and trigger packs. Bipods can be clipped on and removed as needed. Optics and scope mounts require no tools to install or remove. Shell deflectors and carry handles can be added on or removed as needed, all with no tools. The rotary drum sights were precise and also durable enough at the same time. The 4-position setting had 3 graduated pinholes for precision fire, and a wide V-notch for low light and short range fast shooting. So, low light conditions, I was still able to get it within the torso size target at, what, 15? In our practical accuracy episode, we were able to achieve very good scores with iron sights exactly for those 0 to 500 yard targets that the OEM sights were very much designed to negotiate. And a side note is that there are variants like the Swedish AK-4 that have different sights, and some with deleted V-notches, and some have sights going up to 600 meters. To a lesser extent, the Norwegian AG3 sights have a different knurling, and the sight has slight changes to the V-notch. Now the G3 clearly has more recoil than intermediate cartridge rifles. This is a full house 7.62 NATO battle rifle. It's not that it cannot be shot in shorter ranges if one needs to. With iron sights and the wide V-notch, you can effectively shoot at torsos at 25 meters with some speed.
I'll use the big notch sight. Ready?
Now Josh here had never shot a collapsible stock G3 before this day.
Oh my god, this is gonna be fun.
What? What's wrong with it?
I can feel this already. Just going to destroy my chin.
And yet as we put him to the recoiling test, as long as he kept his cadence, he was able to keep the rounds in the vitals.
How did it feel?
Really, honestly, like, it's actually perfectly fine. I think I might have sailed one round here. Yeah, one round. Okay, so there's the one that I sailed. I can see there was one round where it's probably, usually when that happens, it's after like the first shot. Because I see the recoil happening, and when it's a firearm I'm not used to, I'm like, oh crap, that's a lot of recoil happening, and then I just rip the gun back down and obviously pulled it way too far. But the rest of it here seems actually pretty darn good. I know I wasn't shooting terribly quick. I think if I were to shoot faster than that, you'd see this blow up. It wouldn't be a usable or useful piece of information for us as you know, data collectors, if you will. I understand the premise of why you have this weird club-footed device for shooting rifle grenades. However, when I go to shoot that, I mean, it wants to do this. It wants to ride up over the top of my shoulder. It's designed around the concept of making the rifle easier to carry. So when collapsed here, now the rifle is actually about the size of an M4. Obviously, when we extend, it's quite a bit longer, probably up into the M16 length category, if not even a touch longer than that. But if, as part of my daily duty, I need to be carrying this around, and I don't intend to be actively employing it all the time, maybe I would be carrying it around in this collapsed configuration, because it is quite fast to deploy the stock. So you're really not hampered all that much. It's very similar to the PDW stocks that you have out on the market today for some of the short range or close range SBRs or pistols with their PDW braces, and or some of the subguns that are obviously, this design is more akin or familiar to, as in the HK's MP5.
The G3's operating system and its barrel twist are optimized for the 147 grain NATO ball, so if one were to consider suppressing or shoot heavy grain ammunition, the roller delayed components need to be switched out and retimed, somewhat like adjusting gas. We see this as a pro for the user who doesn't really care about shooting general cartridges, but potentially a con for shooters who like to mix heavy grain match loads to the rifle. The bottom line is that it's an ultra reliable battle rifle, but battle rifles do carry more recoil, though manageable. When you shoot it, we absolutely recommend to optimize on its strength in being able to deliver the harder hitting cartridges at longer distances. But wait, isn't the FAL just as good? I'm glad you asked. Without going into too great of a detail for future content, we've shot multiple FALs at this point. Each and every single one of them has experienced some form of stoppages, in groupings typically from 3 to 5 MOA. Now we've actually clocked this PTR-91 or G3 clone's accuracy in its modernized form for a future AK4D video, but we'll go ahead and show you here that this rifle groups at around 2.5 inches at 100 yards with surplus German ball ammunition, and this is typically what we've seen it do. The G3 system tends to be more accurate and way more reliable than every single FN FAL variant that we've shot so far. We haven't had a single stoppage through the 1500 rounds of mixed ammunition we've shot through this PTR-91. And that's not counting past experience I've had with the actual H&K rifles. At the end of the day, the G3 came from an interesting path to focus on a high degree of reliability, delivering excellent performance with ball ammunition at the expense of slightly more recoil. This was a clear answer for the Bundeswehr's call for a good conscript rifle. And through the years, as the G3 became one of the world's most popular rifles, the name Heckler Koch also grew with it, and it brought about its descendants that also made their mark, namely the MP5. But it was the G3 that continued to build more capital and a greater reputation for H&K to develop other projects. And in a strange way, the G3 was brought about through old grudges. Remember, the West Germans were satisfied with the G1 or the FN FAL, but FN Herstal had blocked them from purchasing a license. And subsequently, that grudge that FN Herstal held planted the seed that would grow into their greatest rival for the next subsequent decades: Heckler Koch. Coming soon, the modernization story of the G3 told by the Swedish AK4D and the Portuguese enhanced G3.
Hallo! This is a rolling object. Such an easy solution for weight bearing and the transfer of momentum. This concept is elegantly incorporated in some of these finest small arms in the world. Natürlich, aus Deutschland. Now I hope you are enjoying the show so far. Shows like this, of course, they're brought to you by Slates Black Industries. But more importantly, we have the support of the patrons of Patreon and Utreon. That's right. This magnificent group of men and women, they support us financially, intellectually, but most importantly, emotionally. So today I'd like to invite you, come, join us, become one of us. Zusammen, we will conquer the Welt in small arms development. But if you cannot, we completely understand. We will be just as happy to see you put a comment in the comment section below. But I must say, for now, let's get on with it.
we've got patches for you at slateblackindustries.com. Check out the new Roller Delayed series featuring the MP5A3, aka Nimrod, for the operation that made it famous. The MP5K, who's affectionately nicknamed the Room Broom, and the Swedish AK4D, the enhanced, improved G3. Get yours today at slatesblackindustries.com.
716, this is Jill 96, 4 Vic, 8 packs, Redcon 1, green to green, top copy, over.
96, this is 716, roger, over.